Hello everyone, and welcome to the GTAC Tech Talk webinar on Security Center System Reports and Report Automation. Thank you kindly for being here today. My name is Derek Schaefer. I am a technical training e-content specialist with Genetec, and I'll be your host for the next hour or so. Today we have Nancy joining us from the Genetec Technical Assistance Center, and she'll be helping with the questions and answers during the webinar. If you do have any questions during the webinar, you can type them in the question box of the GoToWebinar console at any time. And one of us will get back to you with an answer as soon as we can, but in case we do need to verify any information for your question, we'll make a note of it and we're going to send you an email as soon as we have an answer for you. All the questions and answers from the webinar will be posted on the GTAC Tech Talk section of the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal forums about a day or two after the webinar has finished. If you do have any additional questions or comments on the webinar or the GTAC Tech Talk webinar series in general, you can post them in this section of the GTAP forum as well. As always, this webinar is being recorded, and all the webinar videos can be found on the GTAP by going to the Resources section, and going to the Video subsection here, and going to the GTAC Tech Talk section in the category browser. Now there are two ways that you can watch these videos, either streaming in a browser window by clicking on this icon right here, or you can download a zipped Windows media file by clicking on the second icon right here. One other way that you can watch this video and other GTAC Tech Talk videos, how-to videos, and operator training videos is on the new Genetec training channel on YouTube. All the previous videos from the GTAP have been uploaded to the channel, which can be accessed from your desktop PC or a mobile device. So please check it out. Just search for Genetec Training on YouTube. Now, if you'd like to receive emails concerning the latest additions to the Genetec Technical Assistance Portal, you can log into the GTAP, go to the My Account section, and go to the Email and Notifications subsection. From the Notifications section down here, you can check the boxes of the subjects that you're interested in, and you can select how often you'd like to receive an email when there's been additions to those subjects. To put a checkbox next to a subject, the frequency here will have to be set to daily or weekly. If you have it set to never, then these options will be grayed out. And of course, if you do make any modifications here, don't forget to hit the Submit button on the bottom of the page. Okay, so let's take a minute here to go over the goals of the webinar. Now, some of the reports we're covering today are ones that we've heard are important from our clients, but it's not always clear when to use them or the differences in information between them. So our basic goal here is to reintroduce you to the system reports and give you some examples as to when you can use them and what they might be helpful for. It can also be time-consuming to pull up the same report every Monday morning, so we wanted to give you some ideas on how you can automate the reporting process as well. Now, looking at the agenda for the webinar, we're going to go through the core reports and give some examples of when you'd use the report, and then take a look at the automation side of things. So we're going to start with the activity trail report, move on to the audit trails, and once we have both of these defined and have some examples for each, we'll take a look at the differences between the two. Next, we'll take a look at the health reports and as well the system status report. Again, we'll take a look at the differences in information that we can get from all three of these reports here. We'll also see how we can fine-tune the events that are tracked by the health monitor. We're going to briefly take a look at the hardware inventory report, just to cover all the core reports, before moving on to report automation. The first thing we'll want to consider is how to configure the reports that we want to automate. And after that, we'll take a look at two ways of delivering these reports using scheduled tasks and event to actions, but the focus really is going to be on the scheduled tasks. You'll see that that's really much more useful for you in the end. Now, as always, for the webinars, we do have our navigation bar on the right. So everything in the agenda is represented here. So if you need to step away for a second or just not sure what section we're on, just take a look at the indicator here and you'll see which section we're on here. This is also good if you want to go back and review the video and you know that you only want to see something that we covered on the health monitor, for instance. You can basically just skip through the video until you see that the indicator is on the health monitor section. Let's start out by taking a look at the activity trail reporting task and see what kind of information it can give us. When we run the activity trail report, we're basically looking for anything a user might have done in their day-to-day activities and any way they're interacting with the Security Center entities. This can be related to any kind of task, including video, access control, LPR, and core functionality as well. So for example, we could see if someone blocked a camera, or if they've set a threat level on a particular area. We want to use this report anytime we need to find out what our users have been doing while working with the system. Interactions with federated entities are shown in the report as well. The records are stored in the directory database, and the list of activity events that will be saved must be set up ahead of time. To change which activities are being saved, we can open the system task, go under the general settings here, and look at the activity trails subsection down here. Each type of event can be checked or unchecked depending on its importance to us. So for example, if we have no confidential cameras in our system and all users should be able to view any camera at any time, we can really stop logging any events related to viewing video. If this type of information will never be relevant to us, it's best to turn off the event recording so we can save on database resources and the directory will not have to constantly process this information. Now in fact, if you have a large system with a lot of events coming in, it really would be preferable to keep only the critical ones checked in the activity trails configuration. Otherwise, your directory database may fill up quite quickly, and that could cause problems with your system. If we want to limit who can run the report, we can modify the user's privileges under the maintenance privilege group, and we can change the activity trails privilege here. Now, most of the reports that we are covering today can be limited from this privilege group here, including the audit trails and the health history reports. Let's have a look at a few examples and see how this information will be useful to us. For instance, let's say that we have a client who has operators monitoring the security system 24 hours a day, and for insurance purposes, they must always have someone watching the cameras and doors. For that client, making sure their operators are logged in on time is very important and something that they want to keep track of. Fortunately for them, we can do that with the Activity Trails report. We just need to select the user logon and user logoff activity types, and just to make sure nobody's leaving early here for the log off. And we can modify the initiator list to include all the operators we want to keep track of. Of course, we want to set the time frame in here as well to know how long we're looking at for the log on and log off, just so we're not getting a huge report here. So once we run the report, we can see that the times that they're logging in and logging out, and the machine that they're on under the initiator machine column here as well. We can click on the column header to sort based on the event timestamp, like we've done here, or on the initiator if we want to check each user's activity without running individual reports. Alright, so let's consider another scenario where this report would be useful. While we're reviewing a length of video footage, we've noticed that there's a gap in the video. Now, before we start getting into the troubleshooting steps and looking at the archiver and databases, the first thing we can try is to run an activities report and check if the unit was rebooted by a user. From the report parameters, we can use the video unit rebooted option right here as the activity type. We can select the unit as the impacted entity, and once we run the report, like we've done down here, we can see who did the reboot for the unit in the initiator column here. We can also see what time it was done at in case there are multiple reboots that have happened. Now, one last example from this report that I'd like to cover is for a situation where confidential video of an incident has been leaked onto the internet, and we need to find out who might have caused it. Now, if we know exactly which camera the video comes from, we can select that as our impacted entity. And we can look for any video export activity events. Once we have identified the export that the video came from, such as in the description here, we can check the initiator to see who the culprit was for the leak. Now, in case some kind of third-party screen capture software was used and we don't see any video export activities here, we could also look for any playback activities for that camera as well, and basically we can question anybody who was viewing that footage at the time. We're going to move on to the next type of maintenance task, which is the audit trail report. Once we've taken a look at it, we'll cover the differences with the activity trail report in the next section coming up here. The types of reports we're looking at in the audit trail report are directly related to changes made on the system. So these are any modifications made to an entity in the system. Now, we're not just talking about cameras or doors or LPR units, but we can also look at users or roles or access rules or any other component of the Security Center system. The events of these changes are also stored in the directory database. If we want to change how long the events are kept, we can do that from the server admin under the Keep Audit and Activity Trails field here, which is in the Directory tab. Now, all the changes are stored here, so we don't need to select any specific types of actions or descriptions like we did for the activity trails. So basically, if any user went into the properties of an entity and made a change to any one of the values, it would basically make a record of it in the system. Now, the descriptions for the changes are constantly being updated, so you might see a record for a change with no relevant details in the description sometimes, but at least you know that a change was made, and we're working on getting those descriptions updated. If a federated entity was modified, we will see the change, but only as it affects the side hosting the federated entity, and not the original entity from the federated system. So in our case here, we know this alarm, the fire exit alarm, is a federated entity. Any changes to a user's privileges will be saved and can be viewed from the audit trail report. Now let's have a look at a few examples to see how this task can be useful for us. In our first example, we get a call from a user who previously had access to a particular partition and was able to see all the partition members. Now, nothing happened on the system or any other user, so we can start our investigation by looking at anything that might have been done to the user entity. Now, the first step, of course, is to check if the user still has access to the partition in question. And if not, like we have in our example here, we can start to look at how that changed. So we can run an audit trail report where we'll use the username of the person as the entity. Of course, the entity type will be user here. We can sort based on that. And we'll look for any descriptions that contain partition access removal. And we're also looking for the partition that's missing as well. That will be listed in the description. We could also look for the partition access insertion event to see if the user was added to another partition as well, or possibly just added to the wrong one by mistake. If we find a record showing the removal from a partition, we can check the date and time, we can check the machine that it was done on as well, and we can question whoever was logged in at that time. If we want to see who was logged into that machine, so if we only had the machine name here, we could check that with the activity trail report that we pulled up right here, and that's what we saw in the previous section. Let's take a look at another scenario where the archiving schedule has changed or the type of archiving was modified. For instance, our archiver should be recording continuously during the business day and on motion overnight. But one of the operators notices that the recording is stopped during the day while nothing is happening in the video. So we can see that it got changed to the on motion manual here. We can run an audit trail report, take a look for any changes made for that archiver. Now we won't see the actual change in the description just yet, but we know something was modified for that role, and we can see when it was done and at least the machine that it was done on as well. So we can go question whoever made that change, and we know at least that they made a change to the archiver at that time. Now, one last example is if a particular door is suddenly not behaving properly. People who were able to pass through previously are now being blocked, and as we see from the Access Troubleshooter, the system is basically reporting this as normal behavior. So from the Audit Trails report, we can go in and take a look at if any access rules were added or removed for this door. In this case, an access rule was added which restricted everyone but VIP cardholders to go through the access point. Now we can go in and remove that access rule and see who made the change for the particular machine as well. We can also see if the properties were changed for the door, but again this would not show the exact parameter change, but it's a good starting point nonetheless. So basically the Audit Trails report can be used to check which entities have been modified recently. For a stable system, this should be a very short list. Any entity that shows up on the list can be investigated to verify the configuration change. Now before we move on, I just want to touch on a few key difference points between the activities and audit trail reports. To put it very simply, the activity trail report is showing you what actions a user took in operating the system, and the audit trail report shows what changes were made on entities on the system. We're looking at daily operations versus system configuration. If you want to see what a user was doing while operating the system, you would use the activity report. If you want to see what a user changed on the system in terms of entity configuration, you would use the Audit Trails report. Now both of them show the user or machine who made the change, so you can track down the person who made the change. They also both are using the directory database for the events list. Only for the activity trails you need to select which ones to keep, and for both you need to specify how long to keep the events. We're going to move on to some of the health reports now, and take a look at the differences between them when we've seen all three of them. The Health History Report is a list of all the health-related events that come from the entities. Now there are three different severities that can be filtered using the report parameters on the side of the report. Information events here are simply notifications with no adverse effects happening on the entity. Warnings here are problems which may require attention soon, and errors are current issues that require immediate attention. Some examples of the type of health events that come in are connections and disconnections of clients, applications starting, roles starting or stopping, and things like RTP packet loss high warnings. Now this is a really good report to see how the system is running and what's happening on the system from an entity perspective. We can use this for investigation of any issues where we need to see the frequency of a problem and what it's affecting. If the archiver stops recording, was it only the roll that stopped, or did the whole server have a problem and the other rolls on the server stopped as well? We can see those results from the health history report. Now let's take a look at a few examples for when we'd use this report. An administrator is reviewing some recorded video for an investigation and notices some distortion in the image. Now, there are many things that can cause this, but an easy first step would be to run a health history report for that camera and take a look for any RTP packet loss high events around the same time as the distortion we're seeing in the video. We can also see if this is a random occurrence or if there's a problem getting video from this unit that needs to be addressed as soon as possible. Now, once the packet loss drops below an acceptable margin, we should get another health event notifying us that the RTP packet loss is in a normal state. If we wanted to be more thorough or have something set up to check this every day, we could look for the RTP packet loss high event for all cameras on the system. Another example of a daily report to check for the state of the system would be to look for remaining archive disk space low events on any machines being used by archiver roles on the system. Considering our access control units, we may see a situation where a door controller is not accepting the credentials of any new cardholders, but is still allowing previous cardholders to pass. In that case, we want to look for any synchronization failed messages for this unit in particular. Looking back at our scenario where we had the gap in the video recording where it should be continuous, we can check the server and role the unit was associated with and look for any problems such as roll stopped by user. It's possible someone needed to do some maintenance on that archiver at the time, so this would basically be an expected outage. Now, something that might be helpful for administrators is a daily or weekly combined health history report that would show any critical problems on the system. For example, we could set it to show only the CPU usage high, the database lost, database space low, memory usage high, remaining archive disk space low, RTP packet loss high, synchronization failed, and the video signal lost events. Now, any one of these could be something that would need to be attended to right away, and it would give them a good heads up right in the morning for them. Now that we've seen the health history report that shows all the events, let's take a look at the health statistics report. The key difference here is the information that we're getting. We're still looking at the entities on the system and want to know if there's any problems, but this report helps us get a general overview of how the entity is working. So basically we're looking at how long the entity has been up and running for at that moment, and how much time it's been available for over the length of time that we selected for the report. The percentage of time the unit has been operational for in the time range we selected is called the availability. This is a good indicator of the stability of an entity and can give us an idea if the unit needs maintenance or is having a problem that's causing it to shut down or restart. Some of the other important statistics that it gives us are the number of failures and the expected versus unexpected downtime. Now, expected downtime is when the entity is not available due to user action, such as deactivating a role or putting a unit into maintenance mode. Expected downtime is not used in the calculations for the entity availability percentage. We can also see the mean time between failures, or MTBF, which is basically how long the entity stays up and running for on average. And next to it is the mean time to recovery, or MTTR, which is how long on average it takes for the device or role to come back up to an operational state. Taking a look at a few examples, we can select the video unit source group from the filters. We can select a time range, such as a week, and we can see how long the video units have been up and running. We can also see if there's been any packet loss events and other information like that from here. Now, this would be a good report to automate to check on a Monday morning to verify how reliably all the cameras have been running, and we can compare that week to week. So this can actually be run and exported, and you can pull them up in Excel and actually generate some statistics based on this too. Now, we'll see in just a few minutes how we can set this up to be sent to us every Monday morning using a scheduled task. We can also select all the roles on the system by using the filter here. So we're filtering only on role, and we're selecting all the roles here. And then we can verify if any of them have gone down recently or at all within a certain time range. So we're seeing our availability is very good here, and we had a week selected, so the uptime is very good. There's just very little downtime, and that's all looks pretty healthy right here. Now, if we did see any problems, such as an archiver that's only been running for 10 hours, we can use the previous health history report to verify what happened to that archiver. Now, if that was due to a user action, we could go back to our activity or audit reports to see who made any changes or restarted the role. We can see that these reports provide a good starting point, but used together they can really give us a good detailed picture of how the system is behaving and performing, including any user interaction as well. Okay, we're going to move on to look at the system status reporting task, and specifically what we can see with regards to the system health from there. In general, the system status task allows you to monitor the status of different types of entities. This isn't so much of a report as a real-time view of the current state of the entities. So for example, we can choose to monitor cameras here, and from the list of entities down here, we can see the recording status here, if the unit is online or offline, and what area or door they've been associated with. We can choose to view other entities like doors as well, and this will show the current status of the door lock here. We can see if the door is open or closed at the current time, and also any entities that the door is associated with, and we can also see if it's online or offline, same as we did with the cameras. Now, depending on the type of entity that we selected to view, you can perform some actions and investigations on a particular entity as well. So looking at our camera list again, if you look at the bottom of the list, you can see that we can block or unblock a camera from these two icons down here at the bottom of the list. We can also click on the Diagnose button here for any camera showing any problems, or we can pull up a health history report if that report is possible for that entity type. Looking at the diagnosis for the camera, we can see the type of tests that have been performed on the entity. Going back to our doors here for monitoring our doors, the buttons on the bottom here change to the unlocking options. Either unlock the door or override the unlock schedule, as well as we can put the door into maintenance mode. And we have our diagnose and health history here as well. Now, in the health history report, if you remember, we can pull up video units and access control units, but not specifically camera and door entities. So in this case, these two type of entities will have the health history button grayed out here. Now, where this task is really useful is when we select the health issues to monitor. Now, this is going to show all the units that are currently having a health issue, make it very easy to find any problems on the system at the current moment. For example, on our system, we can see that we're having a problem with one of the access controllers here, with the LPR manager role, and with one of the cameras here as well. Now we still have the buttons on the bottom where we can perform a diagnosis on any of the entities having an issue, or run a health history to see if there's any clues to why it's offline. So in this case here, I would have selected the camera and hit the diagnose button, and I would have seen all the failed tests here. So basically the unit is offline, it's actually disconnected. Alright, so now that we've seen the 3 different health reports that we can generate, let's take a quick minute to point out the differences between them and when you would use each one of them. Now, as we saw, the health history report is what has happened to the entities in total, including information and non-problem conditions, such as the server started or the role started, RTP packet loss normal, and application connected. The health statistics report is telling us basically how long the unit has been running and how long it was in a problem state over the time period that we selected. And like we just saw, the health issues system status report is giving us a real-time report of the current problems on the system at the present time. So the report here that we would select really depends on what kind of information we're looking for. If we need to see the current problems on the system, we would check the system status report. If we need to see what has specifically happened to a unit over a time frame, we would want to check the health history report. In case we see any units that are having intermittent problems or are showing signs of failure, we would want to take a look at the health statistics report for our units. Now all 3 of those together give us a look at the state of the system and anything that may require maintenance or troubleshooting. Now there's a nice feature that relates to the health events that gets overlooked sometimes, and I want to just take a few minutes to cover that now. From the health history report, we saw the errors, warnings, and information events that come up for our entities. Now some of these are based on a set of variables or information that determines when the event will be sent. For instance, we don't want to send an event every time we see RTP packet loss, or a slight drop on the network would cause a whole bunch of events to show up and basically flood our reports. Instead, we have a parameter set up where the RTP packet loss must be 10% or higher for at least 5 seconds. And that needs to hit that before it'll actually trigger that RTP packet loss high event. Now it also must drop below this value for 5 seconds before we assume that everything is fine and fire the RTP packet loss normal event. A nice feature in Security Center is that we can actually set up these parameters in order to more closely reflect what kind of events are important on our system. So for example, if we had a bunch of wireless cameras on an unstable network, we know we're going to get RTP packet loss until we can fix the network or repair the hardware. So the 10% value that we have set up here may be too low for us, and the event isn't really useful. It's kind of a boy who cried wolf situation here. To change these values, we can go into the system task, go under the role view, and then click on the health monitor right here. From the Properties tab, we can see all the events listed under their respective source groups here. In our example, we want to change the RTP packet loss high and packet loss normal events, which are located under the archiver. Now, if an event has details listed for it, this basically means that you can modify the parameters that determine when the event will be generated, and we can do that by using the pencil icon once we have the event highlighted, or we also have one on the bottom of the screen as well. So let's modify the RTP packet loss high event, and we'll change the ratio to 15%. We could also change the number of seconds it takes to be equal or above this for the event to be valid. Now, some of the other events that can be changed are the CPU usage high, which is under the server section, the remaining archive disk space low event for the archiver and auxiliary archiver, and the database space low event for basically pretty much any entity that uses a database, such as the LPR manager, the directory, and the intrusion manager. Now remember that most warning events have a normal event as well. So like our database space low, we have the normal here. And the remaining archive disk space low also has a normal event. Basically the parameters should match between the two. So if we're going to modify the archiving disk space usage, if we change that from 80% to 90%, we're going to want to change the normal and change it to 90% here as well. Alright, there's one last system report that I want to cover, which is the hardware inventory report. It doesn't really help us for troubleshooting, but it does give us some important system information. I broke it up since it's quite a wide report. There's a lot of information there. So for this report, we can see any details that we might need about the actual hardware that we have on the system. Now this is good if we're looking for a unit with a specific IP address, or if we, where's the IP address? There it is right there. Or if we need to set up a replacement unit with the same firmware, which we can verify from the firmware column here. Now we can run the report to display specific units or units under a role, such as the access manager or an archiver, or we can select the units based on the unit type. Such as access control or intrusion detection. Now once you run the report, you can see the units selected, including any federated units, and any details that are available for that type of unit. For example, if we want to verify that all our video units are on the right firmware, we can set up the filters on the left to only show the video units from the source group. Once we generate the report, we can export that report, and then we can take a look on the Genetec Technical Assistance portal to verify each unit's model. So we have the model right here, and the firmware to make sure it's on the most up-to-date version from the GTAB. Now if we do need to update the firmware, we also have the IP address here very handy. So that makes it a lot easier to get into the unit and do the actual firmware upgrade. Now we could also use the same report in case a video unit has gone down and has a physical problem, and we want to verify that we're ordering the same model for a replacement unit. Now, there's no searching around required or going to the unit and pulling it off the wall or anything like that. All the information we need is right here. Okay, we're going to move on to the automation side of things now. And the first thing we need to do is make sure that the reports are saved and ready to be sent out. To save a report, we first need to open the reporting task and change the parameters and filters on the side of to the ones that we wish to use. So we just need to generate the report and make sure it has all the information that we need on the side here. And next we just need to right click on the task name tab here in the top of the screen, and we're going to choose the Save As option. There are two types of saved tasks that we have available. We have private tasks and public tasks. A private task is one that's only for your use, and you will be the only one who sees this saved task in your task list from the home page. A public task is one that can be used for everyone who has access rights to the partition that you choose to save it in. And this way we can share a common reporting task, but still keep some level of security for it. When you're saving it, you can see any existing tasks of the same type in the list in the middle here. So you can be sure you're not creating duplicates. So if we went to save one for access control units, we'd see, oh, we already have this health statistics report for that, so we'll just use that one instead, or modify the parameters. Then of course we just need to give it a name and select the partition as we mentioned, if it's a public task, and then just click on Save here. Now if we want to see the current list of public or private tasks, we can go to the home page, And then under the task tree, we can either click on private tasks here or public tasks, and we'll get our a list of anything here. If we right click on a task, we can choose to delete it or rename it from here, and this is how we can call it up from this screen as well. So if you're getting tired of running the same report over and over again, there are two ways of automating these reports using scheduled tasks and actions. Let's take a look at the scheduled tasks first. Actions are great for reacting to an event, but the scheduled task may be more useful when it comes to automating reports. To set up a scheduled task, we need to be in the Config Tool application. We need to open a system task, and we're doing this under the Scheduled Tasks section here, the tab. Now any existing scheduled tasks are listed on the tree on the left in case we need to click on any of them and make any modifications. And if you just click on the Create button on the bottom, we can add a new scheduled task entity to the list, and that'll come up asking for a name for the new scheduled task. From here we can go over to the properties to make any changes. Now by default we have the status of a scheduled task set to inactive. Once we have everything set up, we can flip this over to active. It's really a good way of keeping a particular scheduled task handy even if you don't need to have it running all the time. Now the first thing we need to set is the recurrence here, which is basically how often we want the report to be sent to us. The parameters next to the recurrence change depending on which one we have selected. On startup here doesn't have any parameters, but once we have the once recurrence selected, we have the ability to set a date and a time for this action to be taken. If we change the recurrence to weekly, it gives us a choice of the time to execute the action and checkboxes for any days that will be used as well, that it'll be active. So we have Monday checked here, but we could check other ones as well. It's not just one checkbox here. Now the on startup reference here, just to note that, it refers to the system startup, and if we do have an interval recurrence set here instead, it'll start the counter from the time the task has been activated and the change applied. Okay, so our next step, we need to select which action we want to perform. Now we can use schedule a task for pretty much any action that we want to take, such as sending a message or playing a sound. In our case though, we want to do something with the report that we saved. So we basically have two options. We can either mail the report to a user, or we can send the actual saved task to a user who's logged in. If we choose the email a report action here, we need to select the task that we saved in the report drop down here. And then we need to select one or more users to send it to. Now we can also specify the export format, so we can either use a PDF file or an Excel worksheet. This way the recipients can keep track of the reports on file if they want to track any changes over time or refer back to them when they're not in front of the system. Now please note that in order to send the report using the email option, we must have the SMTP section set up in the Genetec server tab of the server admin, and the user must have a valid email address entered in their properties. Now the alternative here is to use the send task option to send the task directly to a user. Now from the parameters below here, we need to choose the task to send and choose the destination. We can use the slider at the bottom to either choose a user or we can choose a monitor itself. Now if we have the user, we can choose to send a message at the same time. So using this send a task action, instead of getting the report as a static file, the task will appear in the security desk of any selected users who are logged in, or in this case, any monitors that have the security desk active. The recipients can then make any changes and run the report again if they need to. Now remember that scheduled tasks are very flexible, so we're talking about reports here, but you really could automate a lot of different tasks. So for example, if you wanted to remind your security operators to submit their incident reports by the end of the week, you could make a scheduled task that runs every Friday at 4 p.m. and our action would be to send a message with our reminder text here. Now of course then we'd also want to select only the security operators as the recipients. So another example, we may want our lobby PTZ camera to go to its home position after everyone leaves the office. So we could set up a daily scheduled task to run at 8 p.m. and we're going to execute the go home PTZ action, and then we're going to go down and find our lobby camera in the cameras drop down here. A second alternative for automation would be to use the event to action functionality. Now we'll be using the same actions as a scheduled task, such as sending a task or emailing a report, but the way that it's triggered is changed. Instead of sending them on a specific day or time, we're sending them as a reaction to an event that happens on the system. So for example, if we're having issues with a camera dropping offline, we can select the camera as the entity type, and then we pick the specific camera that we want to use as the source. And then of course we want the transmission lost event. This is an IP camera, we want to know it's dropping offline, so we're choosing the transmission lost. If this was an analog camera that we're losing the signal on, then we would use the signal loss. But for IP cameras, we want to make sure it's transmission lost here. As well, sorry, just under here we have our schedule. So we could actually set this to only to send us out at a certain time if we need to as well. Now once we get to the action section here, the action could be to email a report, and we want to send our health history report. For that particular unit, we would set this up ahead of time. And we would also choose the recipients here, anybody who we think should see this. One other thing we could try is we could send a report to a user as soon as they log in. So this is basically if this is something that they need to review at the start of their shift, and their shift start time might be flexible, instead of sending it up using a schedule, we can use the logged in event and send them the report as an action. Okay, so that should be everything you need to know about the system reports, and give you some good ideas on how you can use them and how to get them to you automatically as well. In the next couple of days, we're going to post the video of today's webinar on the GTAP and on the Genetech Training YouTube channel, as well as any general questions and answers that we've received from the webinar today. We're going to post those in the GTAP forums. And in the forum section for today's webinar, we'll also have a link to the slides in PDF format. You can use that for your reference as well. Now, in case you have any other questions for Nancy or myself, we're going to keep the session active for about another 10 minutes or so. If you think of anything you'd like to ask after the webinar has finished, or on any other webinar that you've been reviewing if you're watching the video on, please feel free to post it on the GTAP forums under the section appropriate for whichever video or webinar that you're watching, and we'll get back to you basically as soon as we can. Now, one other thing I want to mention is when you close the webinar, or when we end the session from our end here, you're going to be presented with a very short survey just to give us a little feedback on the webinar today. If you can spare a couple of minutes, we would really appreciate any comments or suggestions you have, as it really helps us to fine-tune the webinars and get you the information that you need in a way that's best for you. On behalf of myself and everyone at the Genetech Technical Assistance Center, I'd like to thank you very much for attending the webinar today, and we hope you all have a great day. Thank you.